Good morning from ThoughtStorm Journal. If you've been diagnosed with a mental illness such as depression, anxiety, or panic disorder, please know that you're not sick. What has happened is that you're out of alignment with the truth of who you are. We live in a society that attempts to mold us to a standard that it has set for us. The standard was created by thousands of years of people attempting to tell others what they should need and want and do based on their own narrow, one-size-fits-all perceptions of the world. And these standards and the people who created them didn't care that each person is an individual with individual needs and personal objectives, and that these need to be taken seriously and nurtured and allowed to thrive. For this reason, many of us go through life putting on a performance of sorts to make others happy, while at the same time making ourselves completely miserable. And this can go on for years until we come completely undone, and it manifests as what is known as mental illness, except that it's not an illness. When we are sick with a disease, the symptoms are actually not something that need to be suppressed. The symptoms are actions being taken by the body to rid the body of its state of dis-ease, hence the term disease. But the symptoms are actually attempts by the body to bring us back into alignment. Suppressing the symptoms, such as with medications, can sometimes make us feel better temporarily, but in the long term, they're no real cure. The misalignment is not alleviated, and more or different medicines will be required to keep suppressing these symptoms and make the subject feel better for a while longer until the effects wear off again. Before we know it, the subject feels like they can't live without the medication. It's the same with mental disorders, only this time the symptoms of that disorder are an attempt by the heart and mind to realign itself with nature and the person you were intended to be in the first place. But practitioners of modern medicine only try to suppress symptoms, which are those very things attempting to align us. Symptoms of mental illness are actually signs pointing us toward our true selves. They are guides of sorts that, if we learn to observe and listen to them, will guide us in the direction we were always meant to go in the first place. Once we do that, our supposed mental illness is gone. You may think that's a bold statement, but we live under conditions that have no clue how to treat mental disorders, and people often spend years suffering and searching for their own formulas for finding peace in their own ways. And often, they only find a survivable level of peace combined with numerous coping mechanisms that only help them white-knuckle their way through their lives. This is no way to live, and we can do better. When you've been diagnosed with a mental disorder, you have experienced a calling of your soul, a calling not only to heal yourself, but to help others heal also. Mental illness doesn't happen to the weak, it happens to the strong. It happens to us because we have a higher purpose. Shamans and other healers teach that mental illness is the first of many signs of our calling to become a healer. It's the first lesson in the realization that you have a soul and spirit that needs just as much attention as your body, if not more. On our surface, we have injuries that we and others can physically see and know they exist. Mental illness forces us to go inside ourselves and examine our emotional wounds. We suddenly have wounds that can't be seen. We can't see them, and we can't prove to others they exist. It teaches us that not all that's real can be seen in the conventional way. And this is the first lesson in our journey of emotional healing. People have said to me, I don't want to go inside my head. I don't want to know what's going on in there. I can't stand it. But when you have what the psychiatric community has labeled a mental illness, you are being called to go in. Why? Because you need to go in. You need to go in and face it all. I know that doesn't sound fun. It's not. But once you do it, you'll wonder why you waited for so long. The only way to deal with any problem is directly, and it's no different with emotional problems. We live in a society in which there's very little understanding of emotional issues. We often try to sweep them under the rug, deny them, and suppress them. As we do this, we delay the journey we're ultimately going to make. They are meant to happen because they guide us to the truth. I spent too many years suffering because of so much bad information, so many drugs, and bad advice. This is why I'm here to tell you our society is going about this all the wrong way. If we try to heal ourselves in an atmosphere of modern medicine in which the treatment, quote-unquote treatment, is to suppress the symptoms of the very signs of our awakening, we will live in constant conflict with ourselves and will never heal. This is the case when two energies that oppose each other are thrown together into the same space. This is why symptoms are so persistent and strong and seem so insurmountable, because they are meant to happen and they serve a very important purpose in our awakening. But if the subject is allowed to exist in an atmosphere in which they're guided and treated in a way that understands the symptoms and allows these symptoms to guide the subjects toward what is right and good for them, they will guide the subject to what will make them whole again. There's no conflict. You're listening to your heart and soul. When you do that, conflict ends, and the supposed mental illness dissipates on its own. When you're diagnosed with mental illness, you're told you need to fight it, like a war has started that you need to engage in. This is not the truth. What you really need to do is stop fighting and start listening to your inner guidance system. Stop trying to fit into a mold that's been created for you by others, and start being true to yourself. Once you deal with the truth of who you are and you align yourself with that, you will heal naturally. How do I know? I've been there. After years of fighting and going in the wrong direction, I finally gave up the fight and started listening to what my soul was trying to tell me. And I've been whole ever since. Remember, you're not sick. You're out of alignment. When a doctor tells you you have an illness, you start identifying as someone with an illness, and you begin thinking and acting like someone who is sick. And since your mind has so much power over your body, this makes you feel worse, because what you believe and what you tell yourself matters more than you know. Stop identifying as someone who is sick and start identifying as someone who is temporarily out of alignment with who they are. This is what has happened, and this is a great first step in your journey to healing.